Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Maggie.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. We've got an exciting topic for today, yeah?
Is it?
I think it's exciting in the sense that I find learning new creative ways to do things and to kind of hack life exciting, especially when they save me money and make my life easier.
I guess in that way, it is very exciting.
Yeah. Like taxes are exciting, you know?
Yeah, taxes are exciting to me.
But don't worry, we're not talking about taxes today, folks. We are going to share a bunch of creative ways to save on your medical expenses, medical, dental, etc., costs and expenses.
And Maggie, this is quite timely because on this list, I have done one of these things today.
I want to know which one. Are you going to keep me in suspense?
I think we are both going to go into our medical conditions and histories on this show, right?
You're going to find out more than you wanted to know about a few of our medical conditions. So this episode is not HIPAA compliant in any way.
I think we are allowed to release our own medical information, right?
We will only be releasing our own medical information. Let's make sure we don't release any of our, I think we still have the right to release our children's. We're not going to be releasing anyone else's medical info, don't worry. And probably more than you wanted to know about ours, but we have to give you some real life examples here, you know? So I think here's the way to think about this. You might think, I don't need to know this. I have good medical insurance through my company. And here's the deal. Medical insurance, first off, Mike and I are both on high deductible plans. And so we pay a lot out of pocket every time we go to see someone because it's a while till we hit our deductible. That's the spirit of a high deductible saving or high deductible insurance plan. Even if you have a lower deductible insurance plan, these tips could still help you. And actually, many of them would still help you save money. And so the idea here is, we're challenging the norm that many people have, which is, oh, I just have medical insurance and then I use my medical insurance for everything and I pay whatever I'm supposed to pay based on that. There are all these creative ways you can, within the system, and all of this is, 100% legal. You can get creative about how you cover and think about some of your medical costs, even with low deductible, especially with high deductible insurance, and save a good bit of money and time even in some of these tips.
And Maggie, along those same lines about people just using their company insurance and not questioning things, it's important to keep in mind that medical insurance is a huge business. So yes, doctors are there to treat you and they are good people, but the industry is there to take advantage of you and to make as much money off you as possible. So if you don't do these things, you are just making yourself a victim of the system that's intended to exploit your checkbook and reap as much profit from you as possible.
Yeah. And to be clear, the medical system and insurance providers are no different than every other industry. So we're not like knocking them. We live in a capitalistic society. Every industry is trying to get as much money from you as possible. That is literally like what they're in business to do. You as a conscious consumer who should care about your, I say checkbook, but nobody has checkbooks anymore. Your wallet. I don't even know if anyone has wallet. Your money should want to, again, hopefully if you're even listening to this, you care about, how you can save money and how you can do things a bit differently and even unconventional. Okay, let's jump in. So we've got a bunch of different tips and ideas here. And one other caveat, because I like to give some context. These things apply however you're insured, right? Whether you have Medicare, Medicaid, standard, lower deductible insurance coverage through your employer, a high deductible plan, even if you're part of some of the kind of religious co-op type of insurance services, any way that you have insurance, or if you don't have insurance, many of these things would still apply in terms of creative ways to save money. So we hope this is helpful and makes you kind of challenge the way you may have thought you had to do things.
The first tip to save money is to leverage a flexible spending account or a health savings account. So we've talked about these in a number of different episodes, and we've even had episodes about them specifically. But essentially, if you contribute to these plans, you are saving the income tax on those contributions. And when you use the money to pay for medical expenses, and it can only be used for medical expenses, then you are saving that income tax. And so this is the easiest and most obvious way to save a good chunk of money right off the bat.
Number 2 is when you go to get a service done at a medical provider, ask what the cash rate is. That's usually what they call it, but it's the rate if you don't have insurance. So say, what is your rate if I'm not insured and I just want to pay cash up front? To be clear, you're not literally paying cash. You're like putting it on a credit card. They want some form of payment over the phone typically. But I'll give you an example, especially if you have a high deductible plan, the cash rate can often be better. So 2 real examples. One, I went to, I had some physical therapy done. Or not done. I went to physical therapy and I asked them very clearly, like, don't be afraid or embarrassed to ask questions. I asked them, like, what is the cost if you bill this through my insurance? And she had to go research it and call me back, which she did. And then she told me what their cash rate was for just paying out of pocket each visit and not filing it through insurance. And their cash rate was $100 and it was going to be like over $200 because I have a high deductible plan, on if it had gotten billed through insurance. And that's an example where I was like, cool, I'll pay the cash rate. Thanks.
Yeah,
and then
ridiculous.
It's really crazy. Another example is I had to get an MRI recently. I'm totally fine. I won't get into what it was for, but I had to get one. And the cash rate was $665. And I very clearly asked this. And if I had filed it through my insurance, they told me the amount that they billed the insurance company. And then it was unclear exactly. I didn't finish the process because it was very clear it was going to be well over $1,000 once it got billed through my insurance. And I've looked into this a bit because you wonder, why is that cheaper? These practices employ almost every medical practice has people who do nothing but file paperwork to insurance companies. It's a lot of overhead on their standpoint. And so when they don't have to deal with an insurance company and they just have you paying directly, it's much easier on their practice. And that is often why. And also they have non-insured people who come through and they have to, have a decent fair rate for them to be covered. But I've been shocked lately at especially again with high deductible insurance, but even potentially with low deductible insurance, if you've not yet hit your deductible and you don't plan on using it throughout the year, you still could, the idea of kind of paying out of pocket for the non-insured cash rate could save you a good bit of money on a particular service.
Number 3, when it comes to prescriptions, which could be the bulk of your medical expenses, depending on your situation, consider leveraging mail order prescription services or long-term supply orders. Both of these can get you pretty significant savings. And Maggie, to your point, just because you have insurance and a prescription plan and you go to the drugstore and they tell you it's $15 or $100 or whatever it is, that doesn't mean that is the best price. You are just like most people do not have the patience or the will to go investigate this, but there are a number of opportunities to go find cheaper prescriptions out there.
And most people have a prescription service that is a part of their medical plan through their employer or however they get their insurance. And you don't have to use it, but it's there and it is cheaper if you can be patient, plan ahead for whatever medicine you need. You can even ask a lot of doctors are used to, you can say, hey, can you write me 2 prescriptions, one for like 2 weeks and another for 90 days, right? So that I can go fill this one, but I need something to get me by, especially if it's something you need to start taking right away. And doctors are very used to the idea of giving you a short-term supply so that you can then go and deal with the mail order. And then once you get the mail order set up, it automatically there's ways that you kind of keep it on auto renew. Okay. Another tip, number 4, leverage teledoc services where you can. So this was always available over the last, decade probably, but rarely used and even rarely mentioned by your doctor's office. This became incredibly popular and prevalent during COVID when all of a sudden people weren't supposed to leave their houses or couldn't leave their houses and needed to see someone. And so there often is a very specific rate that's different than seeing an in-person provider for seeing your doctor. And a teledoc service is literally, it's like a video where you're getting on a video call. It's not via Zoom, but It's like getting on a Zoom call with your doctor or a nurse practitioner at your doctor's office. And they can handle all sorts of visits for that. And sometimes that's just a preliminary visit, right? So it can often save you a lot of time, a lot of money. And when you have something pretty standard where, I can't think of a good example, but it can be really helpful. So consider that and look into it with your insurance plan or with a specific doctor to see if it's available to you.
I can think of a specific example because I had a teledoc visit this morning.
Wait, that was it? That was your example?
Yes, that was my example.
Okay.
So
I hear you coughing a little.
Yeah. So I've had a cough for a week. I don't have COVID, don't worry. But I do have what is now a sinus infection. And this is something where, like, I've had this before. It's not super serious, but I know that I need antibiotics for it. And I could go to my primary care physician and pay like $200 for a visit for something I know what it is. I just need them to write me a prescription. I could go to emergency care, still like $100 or something, and same prescription. This one's $40, and I don't have to leave my house. I just kind of like went into the waiting room. A doctor came up, and it was perfect because this guy was like, he was on a mission to get through as many patients as possible, which is exactly what I wanted. I don't want to show up I don't want to drive somewhere. Don't want to wait in a lobby. I don't want to fill out paperwork.
You don't want to share a lot of context about
I don't want to share a lot of context.
Yeah.
I told him the color of my mucus. By the way, it's green, in case anybody was wondering. And he's like,
I was
great.
wondering.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I know. This is why people tune into our show. And
wait,
told
is
me,
green the good or bad color?
Green's the bad color.
Okay, you got an infection.
Yeah. And told me some other stuff to take for the symptoms and wrote me a prescription, and I'm going to go pick it up in maybe 30 minutes when it's ready. Done.
Okay, so Teladoc, green mucus. That's what I took away from that one.
Yep. This stuff works. It's a great service.
Okay, number 5 is leverage Goodrx for savings on prescriptions and doctor visits. I know we just talked about teledoc visits and mail order prescription, but there are times when, again, you want to have all these things in your arsenal and kind of use them when they're most appropriate. So Goodrx is this service. They are not a sponsor. We don't have any affiliate relationship with them. I used them somewhat recently in the past 6 months and was so impressed with their service. So they offer a couple different things. They've been around forever as like a discount prescription service. But they more recently, and I don't know how long ago, but they more recently added basically online doctor visits. It's not even it's a little bit lower than a televisit in terms of its complexity. It's all over chat. You are seeing a licensed doctor, likely not even in your state, but a licensed doctor in the United States, which, by the way, Mike, we should have said at the very beginning, most of what we're talking about here is applicable in the United States. Because
right. If you live outside the United States, it's so much cheaper to get good service. You don't have to worry about it.
True. And everything's just different, right? So we're not well versed on, what it's like in each individual country, because they often have very different setups and services. You can see for like 30 different standards and services, from a UTI to birth control to acne treatment to anxiety medicine to diabetes medicine, acid reflux, migraines, etc. There's a ton of specifics and what's considered kind of more standard, like cut and dry services that they will see you for and prescribe medicine for. I think even having like a kind of common cold like you have, or sinus infection, Mike, is on that list. And what's cool about this is, like, Mike, you paid $40. You can do Goodrx for even cheaper than that.
Oh my God, cool. I should have done some research.
I know. I told you about this a while ago. I think because I kept saying I had a UTI, you didn't want to hear about it anymore.
No, you know what? I got a Goodrx card in the mail. I'm showing it to Maggie on video right now. And so I thought about it, but I already had this Aetna Teladoc thing set up. Okay. And I really just wanted to get it done this morning. So I will research Goodrx and I will create an account. I didn't have the patience for it this morning.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty cool. You got to go to the website. We'll put a link in the show notes. But you pay, like, they have like a gold membership that you can pay monthly. You can trial it for 30 days for a free trial. So that's what I did the first time I used it. And then I canceled it before the end of the 30 days. And then I redid another, it wasn't a free trial, but I just turned it on for 1 month, and it was $19 a month. To get this, gold standard. And then you pay like, it could be like, I don't know, anywhere from like $10 to $40 based on the type of service that you need and what you see someone for. But the first time I did it, it only cost me $19, and then the cost of my prescription. And I was like, this is amazing. For $19, I just got what I needed. And the same as Mike, I knew exactly what I needed. Sorry for if this is TMI, but I had a UTI. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And you're probably a dude if you're not sure what that is. So actually, guys can get that also, but it's more common in girls. So I had a UTI. I knew that's what I had. I needed them to call in the prescription. It can get pretty painful, and I had let it get to that point. And so I was just like, I just need someone to prescribe me this medicine. And it would have cost me, through going to urgent care, I would have paid like over $100 because I have a high deductible plan. I would have paid over $100 at my primary care physician's office, same thing. And I was like, I just don't, that's silly that I have to pay that. So I happened to Google it, and because I was looking for like a natural remedy or just anything to make the pain go away. And I saw Goodrx, and I was like, this sounds too good to be true. And it was such amazing service. I tell you, within 10 minutes of signing up, I had put in they like asked you a bunch of questions. It was clear what I had. And I had spoken to someone on chat. They actually asked me a number of very thoughtful questions to kind of make sure that that's what it was and that it wasn't something else. And then they very quickly were like, cool, we've called in, like I had put in my local pharmacy. They're like, cool, we've called it into Walgreens. And nice. It was so much faster than it was cheaper. It was faster. It was easier. It was more convenient for me. It just hit so many different points. I was just so impressed with it. And then I used it again like 3 months later.
That's great.
And it was awesome.
I will definitely check this out because I like the sound of that.
And they don't seem to penalize you for like turning that gold membership, which is where you just get like a much better rate if you have that membership versus like paying one off for a service. They don't seem to stop you from just turning it on and off, which I've done twice now.
All right. Well, hopefully everybody's enjoying all these very personal medical details from us. Next up is get creative on the timing of your services, because insurance programs will have a bunch of different services that you can only get once a year. Now, this could be a calendar year. It could be 365 days. And so your annual physical, for example, is usually covered and free. For my insurance programs, it's always 365 days, which I find ridiculous instead of a calendar year. But I always have to like space it out. The other thing that you can do with timing is check when you are already having a lot of medical expenses, which are going to help you reach your deductible. So for instance, if you broke your arm and you went to the emergency room and you met your deductible in February, then take some selective procedures, get some additional medications, visit some specialists that you've been putting off for a while, because all of that is going to be covered with your coinsurance because your deductible has been met. You could also do this at the end of the year if you have met your deductible for that calendar year and want to get some less expensive services provided, because as soon as you get into the next calendar year, your deductible resets and you're going to be paying that out of pocket.
Yeah. And another example, Mike, is I was just needing to get a new mouth guard from my dentist for I grind my teeth at night. And I was about to get it when I was there for something else. And my dentist actually was kind enough. Sometimes you will have someone at the doctor's office actually give you a tip to save money. That doesn't always happen though. But she was kind enough to say, and this was like 2 weeks ago, so it was the end of the year. She was kind enough to say, hey, if you just wait till January, she's like, you've already hit your max from your dental insurance this year. But if you just wait till next year, your insurance will cover like half the cost of this, which was about $350. So she was like, you can get it today, or you can just come back in a month and it'll be $350 cheaper. And she didn't know who she was talking to. I don't think she knows about this podcast. So I was like, yeah, I'll definitely be coming back in January. Thank you for the tip. But I don't really pay attention to my dental insurance and maxes. I didn't even know there was a max on my dental insurance, which will be related to a tip we'll share later. Okay. So the next tip is check your bills and make sure you are getting charged correctly for services. You will be shocked at how often you are not getting charged correctly. And this is a little bit of like, you need to understand some things about how stuff works, but you need to actually read the explanation of benefits. And up front, before you ever get billed, don't be afraid to ask questions about how you're going to get billed for something, right? I think sometimes people are like embarrassed or they don't want to ask questions about the cost of things. I have that feeling too. When I'll be at my, I've been dealing with some TMJ issues with a dentist, and it's like, I kind of don't want to be like, well, how much is that going to cost? But I ask it, right? And it does feel TMJ? A little uncomfortable. what does TMJ stand for? I have like a massive jaw clicking that I've had for like 20 years and not dealt with.
I am learning so much about you today, Maggie.
Basically, my jaw is out of alignment and has been getting slowly, slightly painful at times, but it has not been an issue for like 20 years. I always knew someday I would have to deal with it. Yeah, you never heard next time we're together, remind me it's very loud when I open my mouth wide. Okay.
So on this note, the way medical and providers bill insurance is with codes. And those codes have a particular rate that the insurance providers pay back, and then you are responsible for the balance. And it is just some person at the hospital or the doctor's office saying like, Maggie got XYZ treatment. And I saw one that on Britta's recent bill where one thing, her annual physical was coded as like well visit male instead of well visit female or something like that. And she got billed for the full amount instead of it being covered by insurance. And it was just a keystroke error by some person. Yeah. But if I had not read the bill and not called in and asked the question, I would have just paid the $200 or whatever.
Well, and that's an interesting example because that might have been an error. I have an example actually this past year with my annual physical that was not an error. It was a intentional attempt to overcharge me, which really pissed me off. And that provider heard a lot from me on this. So I got my annual physical, which should be free and 100% covered on almost all insurance plans. And I got a bill from them for like $200 and something. And I was like talking to my husband who understands all this because he works for a hospital system. And I was like, what is this? And he actually like dug into it, looked at the codes, and he was like, oh, you got billed for a physical, which was covered. And then they put another code in that same visit that was like, I don't even remember what it was, but during my physical, she asked me, just like you're supposed to do during a physical, if you had any other, challenges or issues or things you wanted to talk about. And
Did you unload on her with all of your issues, Maggie?
Well, actually, and I think I like pointed, I can't even remember what it was, but I think I have this like little kind of bump in the bone on my hand that I've had for like ever. And like, it hurts every now and then. Anyway, I think I just sort of like was like, is this normal? Like, should I be worried about this? And she was like, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. And I had like a bill for like a different, and I was like, are you kidding? She asked me, that is part of a physical, to have a full detailed discussion about how you are doing. And I was just shocked that got billed as like an additional visit that we had, essentially. Like we covered multiple topics, and I was like, oh my goodness. So it took a little bit of work, but I they finally like removed it, but I had to call like the main hospital system and all this stuff. And my point is just pay attention to your bills, right? Don't blindly pay your medical bills if you don't understand what you got, because you could have been billed for like, ibuprofen, which they always joke is like, $80 a pill or something if you take it from a doctor in a hospital. And you might have been like, I never got ibuprofen. I denied that when they offered it to me or whatever it was. So just pay attention to your bills and make sure that you were billed correctly, because that could be a big way to save money.
All right. Number 8, related to COVID, which I'm sure everybody is having this experience now and probably can relate to it. But if you haven't, this is a good introduction to how it works. COVID tests, as well as the vaccines, are all free. They are paid for by the government. And so you give your insurance is billed, the government pays for it. But if you go to a free drive-in testing center or free drive-in vaccination center, you're going to pay nothing. Whereas if you go to your doctor or you go to a urgent care, you're going to pay their service fee and then get the free vaccine or get the free test. And so the takeaway from this is simple. Make sure that you are finding and seeking out the free options for COVID-related services, because you should be paying $0.
Yeah, I mean, this is another example of just like ask questions, pay attention to your bills. When we took our kids just to get flu shots, I had to like reconfirm with my husband that those were covered and that we weren't going to be charged for like an office visit. And he did confirm that. But when we take them in for COVID tests, we get charged for an office visit, which is annoying. But if I go to the drive-through around the corner, which is often like faster and easier, I don't get charged. I mean, someone's still it's getting covered by insurance. Like someone's still getting charged, but I'm not getting charged.
Right. You're paying for it in your taxes.
Yes. Right. Another tips that I'll cover these together is, first off, we are not doctors. This is not formal medical advice. So huge disclaimer on this entire episode. This is our personal opinion and our advice. But be cautious and thoughtful about when you need urgent care or the emergency room, right? Save it for when it's truly critical, when it's urgent care, and when it's truly an emergency for the emergency room, because you're going to pay much higher rates for both of those. That's how they're set up, right? They just have higher costs. And often people, and I used to do this. I used to go to urgent care just because it's right at the top of right at the top of my neighborhood. It's really convenient and easy to just walk into. I don't have to have an appointment. But it's a much higher copay, and it costs more just as a when I have to kind of pay out of pocket as with a high deductible plan. And so I just sometimes need to be like a little bit more patient. But when I had a cold like you have right now, Mike, I used to just go to urgent care and pay like twice the copay, or again, just a higher rate. And on something like that, it's like, if I just do a little bit of work, I can like call my provider, get a proper appointment, or call a different provider, like call some other doctor that's nearby that will do the same thing, right? At the same rate if you don't have like kind of a regular primary care physician that you see. And the same thing with the emergency room, right? Just think about whether what you're going there for is truly an emergency, or if you could even go to urgent care as a because you've got, in terms of your, levels of cost, seeing a, normal primary care physician is going to be, something like Goodrx or Teladoc is going to be the cheapest. Then you've got going into like, primary care or a specialist office. Then you've got urgent care. Then you've got an emergency room. So just think about, that sort of level of increasing costs, and if you truly need it based on what the medical condition is. Obviously, if it's an emergency, go to the emergency room. I'm not suggesting you don't do that. But there are times when people go to the emergency room or urgent care that they don't actually need to.
I think a simple way of describing our advice here is that you should not go to urgent care or the emergency room for convenience. Go because it is a legitimate emergency and you need immediate care regardless of the cost.
That is a much more clear and concise way of saying it, Mike. You're always very good at that.
Yeah, well, thank you. So
the next one is something that I personally employ. And if you don't have a blended family, which means like, you've been divorced and remarried or something like that, then this isn't really going to be applicable to you. When you have kids on an insurance plan, usually it doesn't matter how many kids you have. Most insurance plans, it's either an individual plan or it's a family plan. And so that cost is the same, right? This is another example where you would be much more clear and concise, Mike, than how I'm about to explain this. But as an example, we have my husband and I have a blended family. My husband has 2 kids. I have 1 child. We have them all on one insurance plan because it's the same price. There was a time early on where I had my daughter on my plan. We were both paying for family plans essentially. And then I looked into it and I was like, wait a minute, they can all be covered on one plan. All the insurance company requires, you might think, well, my daughter is not, a blood relative of my husband, but it doesn't matter. It actually just matters if we live and kind of reside in the same household together. And so all I had to do was show that my daughter is my daughter and that I am married to Greg. So I had to show my birth certificate, and the insurance company did ask for verification just because of the different last names. But you can easily do that. And that saves that literally saves us hundreds of dollars because we don't have to have 2 different family plans. And you can do that across families, right? So if my husband didn't have kids and I just had my daughter and my ex-husband has another child, the same thing, I'd have him cover her because there's no incremental cost. So it's just think about blended families and being strategic about where you place your kids and which parents plan they're on. And you can save hundreds of dollars by doing that.
And there's really no easy way to figure out the costs for this. You really just have to look at the different premiums, look at the different plans, and do some math. I mean, these plans are set up by design to be so complicated that you'll never be able to figure them out. And so the only way you're going to be able to do what Maggie's describing about finding the most cost-effective solution between different plans is to do the math. And I'm sorry, I wish there was an easier way, but it's not. All right, next up, when it comes to dental insurance as well as vision insurance, these plans are not exactly like medical insurance. Medical insurance is extremely complex. It is broad in scope, and it covers expenses that could be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Dental insurance and vision insurance are typically low cost, but also low benefit plans because they don't cover a broad range of things. And so there are certainly some ways that you can save money. It's not going to be a ton of money because, again, the plans don't cost much to begin with. But there are other things that you could do. Like some dentists will actually offer their own plans where you prepay for like basic services and then you get services at a lower discounted rate. It's a way to get around some of the insurance restrictions. You should go investigate what your local dentist, current optometrist, ophthalmologist. They're right. Two different ones. They do two different things, right? Ophthalmologist and optometrist.
Yeah, one does more like glasses and stuff.
Yeah.
The other
you can tell that we're not
like
doctors, Maggie. Yeah, you made that caveat, but I think it's clear. We are not doctors.
Yeah, I was shocked. I never even knew these plans existed. And recently I was in 2 different dentist offices and they literally had the sheet sitting right there on the table in the waiting room that like markets these, kind of wellness plans that they offer. And they're pretty, I've run the numbers on them and they're pretty good deals.
All right, Maggie. So this was a great list, and it was a good reminder for me, and I also learned some new stuff. I've heard you mention
stuff about my medical conditions or like how to save money.
Yes, that too. You have like lockjaw, and you have headgear that you wear at night.
I don't have headgear.
And you
actually maybe a mouth guard's considered headgear.
But this is an industry that is designed to be complex and overwhelming for people. And so it benefits everyone to dig into this and understand their situations and what they're paying for. So hopefully this list was helpful. Okay.
Well, thanks, Mike. Always a good discussion.
Yeah. Thank you.
We thank you all. And aside from thanking you, Mike, thank you for listening to us. If you have been challenged or inspired by what you've heard, please rate and review the show. We always appreciate it when you leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us for other people to find our show. And if you have any thoughts or questions, we would love to hear from you. You can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can hit us up on Instagram.
All right. Thanks, Maggie.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Bye.
Bye.